My name is Emma Chen, and according to my family's records, I died in a tragic car accident 10 years ago. There was a funeral, tears were shed, condolences were given, and my sister Sarah inherited everything my parents had left me. The only problem, I'm very much alive. I stood in the pristine kitchen of La Rave, San Francisco's most exclusive catering company, reviewing the final details for tomorrow's wedding, a $300,000 affair at the Fairmont Hotel. As executive chef and catering manager, I had overseen countless high-profile events, but this one was different. This was my sister's wedding. Chef, the specialty menu cards just arrived. My assistant Michael handed me an ornate envelope. I opened it carefully, my fingers tracing the gold-embossed names: Sarah Chen and William Montgomery A.I. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, Sarah had orchestrated my death to claim our parents' inheritance, a substantial fortune worth over $8 million. Now she was about to marry into old money, completely unaware that her supposedly dead sister would be running her perfect wedding. I still remember that night clearly, October 15th, 2013. I was 23, fresh out of culinary school and full of dreams. Sarah was 25, already climbing the corporate ladder and our parents' clear favorite. When Mom and Dad died in a plane crash 6 months earlier, their will had surprised everyone by leaving 60% of their estate to me, their less successful daughter. Sarah was furious. She couldn't understand why they would leave more to her little sister who just wanted to cook, instead of her, the Harvard Business School graduate. But Mom and Dad had seen something in me that Sarah never did: genuine passion for creating something meaningful. That night, Sarah asked to meet me at our old family cabin in Lake Tahoe. To talk things through, she said. I should have known better. I arrived to find the cabin dark and empty. As I turned to leave, something hard struck the back of my head. I woke up 3 days later in a small hospital in Mexico with no ID, no phone, and no way to prove who I was. By the time I made it back to San Francisco weeks later, Sarah had already reported me missing, then dead. She had my car pushed into the Pacific Ocean off Highway 1, my blood, from the night she attacked me, smeared on the driver's seat. Everyone believed her story, her grief-stricken testimony about how I had been struggling after our parents' death, driving recklessly, probably drinking. The perfect explanation for a tragic accident. The body was never found, but after 6 months, I was legally declared dead. Sarah inherited everything: the house, the investments, our parents' tech company shares. I had nothing, no identity, no proof, no way to fight back legally. So I did the only thing I could. I disappeared for real. I moved to New York, used my savings to create a new identity, Emma Wong, and threw myself into building my culinary career. I worked 18-hour days, learned from the best chefs, and slowly built my reputation. When La Rave offered me the position of executive chef in San Francisco last year, I knew it was time to come home. Sarah had no idea I was back. She had hired La Rave because of our reputation, never bothering to check the name of the chef who would be handling her wedding. Why would she? Her sister was dead. Chef. Michael's voice pulled me from my thoughts. The wedding planner is asking about tomorrow's timeline. I looked down at the schedule in front of me. 2:00 p.m. Staff arrival and setup 4:00 p.m. Wedding ceremony 5:00 p.m. Cocktail hour 6:00 p.m. Grand entrance of bride and groom 6:15 p.m. First course served. Little did Sarah know, I had my own timeline planned. 6:10 p.m. Reveal the truth 6:11 p.m. Watch my sister's perfect world crumble. Tell them everything is on schedule, I said, smiling. Tomorrow will be a wedding no one will ever forget. That evening, I stood in my apartment overlooking the bay, sipping a glass of wine and reviewing old family photos on my laptop. I had spent years gathering evidence, hospital records from Mexico, security camera footage from the cabin, witnesses who had seen Sarah there that night. The truth was a puzzle, and I finally had all the pieces. I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. Mr. Patterson? Everything is set for tomorrow. Do you have the papers ready? James Patterson, one of San Francisco's top lawyers, had been working on my case for months. All set, Emma. Once you reveal yourself at the wedding, we can immediately file the lawsuit. The evidence is overwhelming. Sarah won't know what hit her. I thanked him and hung up, walking to my bedroom to check my outfit for tomorrow one last time. My chef's whites were perfectly pressed, my name tag polished. Emma Wong, executive chef. But in my closet hung another outfit, a simple black dress for when the time came to shed my disguise. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about all the years I had lost. Sarah hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She had stolen my identity, my family connections, my chance to grieve our parents properly. Tomorrow, she would finally understand the cost of her betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Final guest count, 300. Bride requested extra champagne for the toasts. I smiled in the darkness. Yes, Sarah would definitely need that champagne. After all, it's not every day your dead sister comes back to life at your wedding. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the Fairmont at exactly 2:00 p.m., directing my team with practiced efficiency as we transformed the grand ballroom into a fairy tale setting. White roses and orchids cascaded from crystal chandeliers, delicate place settings sparkled in the afternoon light, and the air filled with the aroma of expertly prepared dishes. At 3:30 p.m., I spotted Sarah doing her final walkthrough with the wedding planner. She looked exactly as I remembered, only more polished, more expensive. Her designer wedding dress probably cost more than most people's cars. She swept past the kitchen without a glance, never suspecting that her past was about to catch up with her in the most spectacular way. Everything has to be perfect, I heard her snap at the wedding planner. I've worked too hard for this day to have anything go wrong. Oh, Sarah, if only you knew. As my staff put the finishing touches on the appetizers, I thought about the moment that was coming. Soon, the sister who had tried to erase me from existence would learn that some things can't be buried forever. The ceremony began at 4:00 p.m. From my position in the kitchen, I could hear the string quartet playing Canon in D as 300 of San Francisco's elite witnessed Sarah Chin become Mrs. William Montgomery AUI. I wondered how many of them had attended my funeral 10 years ago. By 5:00 p.m., the cocktail hour was in full swing. My staff circulated with trays of perfectly executed hors d'oeuvres while guests mingled and congratulated the happy couple. I stayed in the kitchen, watching through the circus entrance as Sarah laughed and posed for photos, basking in her moment of triumph. At 5:55 p.m., I changed into the black dress I had brought, carefully fixing my hair and makeup. My hands didn't shake. I had waited too long for this moment to be nervous now. Michael, I called my assistant over. You're in charge of service. I have something important to take care of. He nodded, confusion flickering across his face at my change of attire. Yes, chef. But aren't you supposed to supervise the first course? I smiled, Trust me, no one will be thinking about the food in about 15 minutes. At 6:00 p.m., the wedding planner began herding guests toward their tables for the grand entrance. I positioned myself near the kitchen doors, watching as Sarah and her new husband prepared to make their entrance. At 6:05 p.m., the MC's voice boomed through the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and welcome, for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. William Montgomery. The doors flew open. Sarah and William entered to thunderous applause, her smile radiant, her walk triumphant. They made their way to the head table, champagne glasses raised high. At 6:10 p.m., exactly as planned, I stepped out of the shadows. "What a beautiful wedding," I said loudly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "I'm sorry I missed the ceremony, but then again, you didn't invite me, did you, Sarah?" Sarah turned toward my voice, the color draining from her face as recognition dawned. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Ghost!" she screamed, stumbling backward into her new husband's arms. "It's impossible." I smiled, walking closer to the head table. "No ghost, Sarah. Just your very alive sister, here to get back what you stole from me." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests jumped to their feet, phones raised to capture the drama unfolding before them. William looked between his new wife and me, confusion etched on his face. "Sarah," he said slowly, "what is she talking about? Your sister died 10 years ago." "That's what she wanted everyone to believe," I said, my voice steady. "But I think it's time for the truth. Don't you, sister dear?" Sarah's perfectly made-up face contorted with rage and fear. "This is ridiculous. This woman is clearly an imposter. Security." She waved frantically at the uniformed men by the doors. "Remove her immediately." I stood my ground as 2 security guards approached. "Before you do that," I called out, my voice ringing through the stunned ballroom, "you might want to see these." I nodded to Michael, who had appeared beside me with a leather portfolio. "What's going on?" William demanded, his aristocratic features twisted in confusion. "Sarah, explain this." I opened the portfolio, removing a stack of documents. Hospital records from Guadalajara, Mexico, dated October 18, 2013. DNA test results. Security camera footage from our family cabin in Lake Tahoe. And I paused, pulling out a final photograph. This. The photo showed Sarah and me at our parents' funeral, standing together in black dresses, her arm around my shoulders in a show of sisterly comfort. The same photo had been displayed at my funeral 6 months later. "That proves nothing," Sarah snarled, but her voice trembled. "Anyone could have gotten that picture." "Really?" I turned to the elderly man sitting at table 3. "Uncle Peter, do you remember taking this photo? Do you recognize me?" Uncle Peter stood slowly, his face pale, as he studied my features. "Good God," he whispered. "Emma? But how?" Before Sarah could interrupt, I continued. 10 years ago, Sarah asked me to meet her at our family cabin. When I arrived, she attacked me from behind and left me for dead. She then staged my accident, using my blood from the attack to make it look like I had driven off Highway 1. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. William stepped away from Sarah, staring at her with growing horror. "She did this because 6 months earlier, our parents had left me 60% of their estate. Sarah couldn't accept that. So she eliminated me, claimed everything for herself, and built her perfect life on the foundation of attempted murder. That's enough. Sarah screamed, lunging toward me, but she never reached me. Two men in dark suits stepped forward from the crowd. "Miss Chen," one of them said, "I'm Detective Roberts, SFPD. We've been investigating your case for the past 3 months. Please come with us." Sarah's eyes darted wildly around the room, looking for escape. Finding none, she turned to William, her voice suddenly soft and pleading. "Will, darling, you don't believe any of this, do you? She's lying. She's trying to ruin our special day." But William had already removed his wedding ring. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly, "but I know I never want to see you again." As the detectives led Sarah away, her perfect wedding dress dragging across the marble floor, I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sadness for everything that had been lost. The next few hours passed in a blur. Guests departed in shocked whispers. The catering staff packed up untouched meals, and William's family huddled with their lawyers, already planning to annul the marriage. I sat alone at what had been the head table, fingering the delicate place card that bore my sister's new name. "Emma?" I looked up to see Uncle Peter standing there, tears in his eyes. Behind him stood Aunt Marie, Cousin Rebecca, and other family members I hadn't seen in a decade. "We buried you," Uncle Peter said softly. "We mourned you. All this time." I stood, letting him pull me into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. I tried to come back, to prove who I was, but Sarah had been thorough. No one would believe me. "Oh, sweetheart." Aunt Marie joined the hug, her familiar perfume bringing back memories of childhood Christmases and summer barbecues. "We should have known, should have questioned more." Over the next several hours, I told them everything. How I had woken up in that Mexican hospital, confused and alone. How I had spent weeks trying to convince authorities of my identity, only to discover I had been declared dead. How I had finally realized that starting over was my only option. "But why come back now?" Cousin Rebecca asked. "Why not earlier?" I smiled sadly. I needed time to build an unshakable case. Sarah had stolen my identity, my inheritance, my whole life. I couldn't risk failing again. "The inheritance," Uncle Peter said suddenly. "Good Lord, she's been managing your share of the company all these years, using your money to fund this lifestyle." "Not anymore," said a new voice. James Patterson, my lawyer, approached with a thick folder. "Emma hired me months ago. Now that she's proven she's alive, we can immediately file to reclaim her inheritance, with 10 years of interest. Plus," he added grimly, "criminal charges against Sarah for attempted murder and fraud." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, DNA tests, and emotional family reunions. Sarah was denied bail, deemed a flight risk due to her substantial financial resources that were technically mine. The media had a field day with the story. Bride arrested at wedding. The return of the dead sister. Millionaire Harris faked sister's death for inheritance. Wedding from hell. San Francisco's social event of the year ends in handcuffs. I tried to maintain my normal routine at La Rave, but it was impossible. Everyone knew my story now. Clients specifically requested me, not for my culinary skills, but to hear firsthand about the dramatic wedding revelation. 1 month after the wedding that wasn't, I sat in the conference room of Patterson and Associates, signing the final papers to reclaim my inheritance. The total amount, including interest and investments, had grown to over $15 million. "There's one more thing," James said, sliding another document across the table. "The board of Chin Technologies has voted unanimously to reinstate your majority shareholding. You now control 60% of the company, just as your parents intended. I stared at the paper, thinking of Mom and Dad. They had seen something in me, not just a chef with a dream, but someone who could balance creativity with business sense, someone who could lead. "What will you do now?" James asked. "Will you leave Le Rave to run the company?" I thought about my kitchen, about the joy of creating beautiful food and memorable experiences. "No," I said finally. "I'll remain a silent partner in Chen Technologies. The current management team is doing well. But Le Rave?" I smiled. "I think it's time for Le Rave to expand." 3 months later, I stood in front of the historic Victorian mansion I had just purchased. The sign above the door read, "Le Rave at Chen House, Restaurant and Events." My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Peter. "Visiting Sarah today. She's asking to see you." I stared at the message for a long moment. Sarah had pleaded guilty to reduced charges, accepting a 10-year sentence rather than risk a longer term. Part of me wanted to ignore her request, to let her sit with her choices just as I had sat with their consequences for 10 years. But another part of me remembered 2 little girls sharing secrets and dreams before money and jealousy poisoned everything. I texted back, "Next week, I'll think about what to say." As I unlocked the door to my new restaurant, I realized that success isn't just about reclaiming what was stolen. It's about building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Sarah had tried to erase me from existence, but instead, she had forced me to become stronger, more resilient, more determined. The renovation crew would arrive tomorrow to begin transforming this old mansion into San Francisco's next culinary destination. But tonight, it was just me, standing in the empty foyer, imagining the future. I thought about Sarah in her prison cell, her perfect life shattered by her own choices. I thought about our parents, who had believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And I thought about the young woman who had woken up in a Mexican hospital 10 years ago, terrified and alone, never imagining she would one day turn that pain into triumph. My phone buzzed again, a message from William Montgomery IUI. "Had dinner at Le Rave last week. Incredible experience. Would you consider catering my next wedding? Promise this one will have considerably less drama." I laughed out loud, the sound echoing through the empty house. Yes, there would always be weddings, always be celebrations of love and hope and new beginnings. And I would be there, creating beautiful moments for others while finally living my own. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the mansion's tall windows. Tomorrow would bring contractors and permits, and all the chaos of building something new. But tonight, I climbed the grand staircase slowly, running my hand along the polished banister, and made my way to what would become my new office. I placed a single framed photo on the bare desk, the last picture taken of our whole family together, before greed and jealousy tore us apart. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and me, all smiling at some long-forgotten joke. I made it. I whispered to their frozen smiles. I found my way home. Outside, the fog rolled in from the bay, wrapping the mansion in its mysterious embrace. But inside, the future was crystal clear. I had reclaimed my name, my inheritance, and my place in the world. Now it was time to build something worthy of that second chance. Revenge, I had learned, doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, building something beautiful, and letting go of the past while never forgetting its lessons. Sarah had wanted to write me out of the story. Instead, She had given me the first line of a whole new chapter, and this time I would be the one holding the pen.